The nation is awaiting a decision on whether Judge Brett Kavanaugh will be confirmed to the Supreme Court. Senators on the Judiciary Committee are expected to vote on Kavanaugh's confirmation to the High Court on September 20th. That followed by a vote by the full Senate the following week. This all comes after last week's contentious confirmation hearings, where Judge Kavanaugh was grilled on everything from abortion, guns, civil rights, and his ability to be independent of the president who nominated him. But it all began with a rebellion from Democrats against restrictions on documents from Kavanaugh's years at the White House. Watch.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night, less than 15 hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman.
I extend a very warm welcome
we have not been
Judge
given
Kavanaugh,
an opportunity to have a meaningful hearing on this nominee.
South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham witnessed it all. He joins me right now to talk more about it. He sits on both the Senate Judiciary and Budget Committees. And, Senator, it is good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. Your reaction to last week's proceedings.
The Democrats are under a tremendous amount of pressure from the left to destroy everything Trump. I was very disappointed in the tone of the hearing, trying to suggest that Judge Kavanaugh was not telling the truth about a conversation between him and some person in a 300-person law firm that bore no fruit. In terms of documents, we gave Democrats more documents on Kavanaugh than the last 5 Supreme Court nominees combined. He's the most qualified judge of his generation, outstanding, 12 years on the bench. You know exactly what you're getting with him, 300-plus decisions. This was an effort by the Democrats to respond to a base that's just really gone crazy with all things Trump. He's going to get confirmed. I think there'll be a handful of Democrats vote for him on the floor, nobody in the committee. Confirmation hearings now are about base politics. It's not about the qualifications of the nominee. And I really hate that.
Well, you know, it's extraordinary when you look at the resistance that's happening on all fronts against this president, including his nomination to the Supreme Court of Brett Kavanaugh. How do you think the impact plays out here? Do you think voters will remember the resist and obstruction coming on the left in terms of trying to get things done come November?
I don't think voters remember process. They do remember results. I think a lot of voters who've had a chance to look at Judge Kavanaugh, the ABA gave him the highest rating possible, well qualified. You had liberal lawyers who'd interacted with the judge throughout his career said that he was nothing but a tremendous, well qualified, call it as you see it, judge. So I think in 2020, particularly, those who are running on the Democratic side feel like they need to be loud and they need to be mean, they need to be rude to get the nomination. Kavanaugh will matter in terms of how you vote in 2020. The process won't. The economy will matter. How safe we are will matter. Results will matter. And I think that's why President Trump is doing so well, because he's had good results. They don't talk about results. They talk about personality and process because they don't have an alternative agenda that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that is why the left is trucking out their big prize here. That is President Obama. President Obama was out on the campaign trail this weekend a lot, and he had something to say about the way President Trump handles things. Listen to this. I got to get your reaction.
We do not pressure the Attorney General or the FBI to use the criminal justice system as a cudgel to punish our political opponents, or to explicitly call on the Attorney General to protect members of our own party from prosecution because an election happens to be coming up. I'm not making that up. That's not hypothetical.
Wow. That's just one big wow, particularly after what we've witnessed took place in the 2016 election, where a group of individuals at the top of the FBI and the DOJ pushed to stop Donald Trump and exonerate Hillary Clinton with not a lot of investigating. Your thoughts on what you just heard, Senator?
Right. Well, it's not, President Obama, it's not what you're making up. It's what you're leaving out. You're leaving out the fact that your attorney General Loretta Lynch told the FBI director, don't call the Clinton email investigation an investigation, call it a matter. You're forgetting to tell the public that the number 4 at the Department of Justice, Bruce Orr, wife worked for Fusion GPS, which was on the payroll by the Democratic Party to hire a foreign agent to go to get dirt on candidate Trump and Russia. You're leaving out the fact that Mr. McCabe, the number 2 guy at the FBI, is under grand jury investigation for lying. You're leaving out the fact that the director of the FBI, under your watch, Mr. Comey, actually leaked internal memos for the express purpose of getting a special counsel appointed. You're not talking much about the Page-Strzok memos where they openly hated Trump in the tank for Clinton. Other than those few details, President Obama, you got it right.
Yeah. Well, where does that investigation stand at this point in Senate Judiciary? I mean, we've watched a handful of interviews, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, et cetera. Where does this go from here, from your standpoint, sir?
We need a special counsel yesterday. I'm so disappointed in the Department of Justice. You've got the number 4 person at the Department of Justice who basically is in narcotics, handling Christopher Steele, who's the chief author of the dossier used to get a FISA warrant. Orr's wife worked with Christopher Steele at Fusion GPS. They were on the payroll of the Democratic Party. He met with Steele after Steele was found to be an unreliable informant. You got McCabe facing grand jury inquiries.
Right.
You need a special counsel. And the documents that the House is asking the president to release about how corrupt the Department of Justice was on President Obama's watch, they need to be released, because on President Obama's watch, the Department of Justice was political and corrupt to its core, and the top levels of the FBI under President Obama, on President Obama's watch, were also corrupt, fired and facing indictment.
Senator, why won't the president declassify the documents so that the American people can understand and clearly see how this investigation was hatched? If you were to release the documents before the investigation was launched in July of 16, we could clearly see the conversations that took place to better understand why Hillary Clinton was not investigated and why they were trying to stop Donald Trump. Will he declassify?
Well, yes, they should. We're not compromising any informant. We know all about Christopher Steele. We know that he was a former British intelligence agent who hated Donald Trump, who felt like he needed to personally stop Trump from winning, that went to Russia, got information from the Russian intelligence services to write a dossier, this bunch of political garbage. It was used to get a warrant on Carter Page. We know that Bruce Orr's wife worked for Mr. Steele. We need to get all this information out as part of oversight. Somebody needs to watch those who watch us. So if I were the president, for transparency's sake, for oversight's sake, for reforming the Department of Justice and FBI to get a better product in the future, I would release this just to show what President Obama said about how good his FBI and Department of Justice actually were is a complete falsehood.
Well, there are calls for the president to do just that. We'll be watching that. Let me move on to this op-ed from the New York Times this past week, because with all of this going on, the detractors on the left are basically trying to paint a picture of massive chaos all the time. In the White House, the new book by Woodward comes out this upcoming week, Fear, and then you've got this op-ed that the New York Times released from an anonymous source who says he's trying to stop the president from making all these bad decisions, but he is on the resist movement side. Your thoughts? Who wrote that op-ed?
Right. I don't know, but here's what I do know, that the op-ed and the book won't matter in 2020. The president will be judged on his results. As to the author of the op-ed piece, they suggest that if it weren't for him and a few others, the president would not be doing good things for the country. Isn't it kind of odd that everything the president's doing, he promised to do during the campaign? He promised to cut taxes, he did. He promised to destroy ISIS, we are. He promised to nominate people from a list of 25. He's picked 2 out of that list. Everything the president promised about deregulating America, he's delivering on. He promised to rebuild the military. It's kind of odd that everything he's doing, he promised. Here's what I think. Why this op-ed piece now? The New York Times is the choir director for the left. They set the agenda for the left in the mainstream media. They chose this op-ed piece to start a narrative that Trump is crazy, I think because the Russia probe is falling apart. The idea that, that Trump colluded with Russia, his campaign, is falling apart before our eyes. So I think the New York Times is trying to start a new narrative by publishing an op-ed piece from an anonymous source to suggest the president is unhinged. This is an effort on their part, in my view, to start a new storyline because the Russia probe storyline is falling apart.